Carp Academy, Bivvy TV. Here we are with Dave and Lee. Going to talk about the actual test curves of rods and how much pressure they actually put on fish while we're playing them. I think there's a real thing there where people think a 3.5 pound rod and a 2 pound rod or whatever they are make an awful lot of difference to actually the pressure that you're putting on fish and losing fish for hooks, pulling out and that type of thing. So what do you think, lads? You know.
Well, first and foremost, I would say that, I mean, from my experience of not only as a carp angler, working in a busy carp orientated fishing tackle shop, the first mistake that people make, they think, I'll buy a bigger test curve rod so I can cast further, which, providing the person can use the rod, they probably can. But those very same people are probably fishing a 5 acre lake where you don't need a 3 pound or a 3.5 pound test curve rod. I mean, far better. I would always suggest people buy something around about 2 3/4 pounds, yeah, which is a good sort of all-round test curve, and then use it with a sensible size reel, not one of these great big pit reels.
And balanced tackle. Really.
Yeah, balanced tackle. And the main thing you're going to get from that is it's going to be a lot more pleasurable to play the fish. You know, it's nothing when you're playing the fish and the rod don't bend.
No.
It's supposed to be for fun, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
And also, because it's a lighter test curve, there's less chance of hook pulls or hook links breakages and things like that. You know, it's just going to be a lot more of a pleasure to use. You know, and perhaps Davey, I mean, you can explain what a test curve actually means.
Yeah. Well, the rods which I use at the moment are 3 3/4 pounds, which means the rod of bend, once the rod's bent at 90 degrees, the back pressure you're exerting is 3 3/4 pound of pressure. If you take into account using the nylon line as well, which has got stretch in it, over 40, 50, 60 yards, you're not exerting any more than 2.5 pound of pressure on a fish. Again, it really depends. If you're using a softer rod like Lee, I think they're what, 2.5 pound test rod, you'll probably exert as much pressure on that rod over distance as what I can on this. But you're going to get much more pleasure in playing the fish because it's a softer rod. Also, if I put a 2-ounce lead on this rod and try and cast this to the horizon, it's not going to happen.
That's right.
You put a 2-ounce lead on that rod, you're going to cast further with a 2-ounce lead than what I am with this one.
That's right, yeah.
And this is where I think people make a big mistake all the time. It's the same with the line diameters and that, you know. They think they've got to use 15-pound line if they're using 12-foot 3 3/4 pound rods to cast 4-ounce leads. You know? Where people don't have to do that. You know? And it's like Al said, you just match your gear up together. And you get much more pleasure out your fishing. We don't all have to cast 150 yards.
No, that's right. And the thing is, as well, I mean, I take, I like to sort of feel my lead down through the water and feel it dog the bottom. If you put a 2, and a lot of times I fish with fairly light leads, like 2-ounce leads, 2.5 maybe at most. If you put that on a 3 3/4 pound rod, you just don't feel anything, you know. But I mean, there's one thing to mention is the action of the rod is really important, because you can have 2 rods that are identical test curve, both 2 3/4, but depending on the stiffness of the butt, depends on how much. I mean, the one with the stiffer butt will cast further than the one with a soft, more through action, like sort of compound type
and
taper.
That's a faster taper rod, isn't it? The one
that's right,
It's a faster taper rod, yet the through action ones are a slower taper.
That's right,
to medium taper.
Yeah. I mean, but if you, I mean, you can do it. I mean, we got a proper machine at Tackle Box, what we've sort of set up, so you can test the stiffness of the butt. I mean, basically you can get 2. I mean, it's a fairly soft butt. Yeah. But you could get another rod of the same test curve, and it could be stiffer or it could be. So that really, I mean, it's the butt of the rod that's doing your casting. When you're punching with that end and pulling with that one, and but obviously the more through action it is, the nicer it is to play fish and everything, you know.
Totally agree with you. Should we get some of these on some scales then and see what see what we can actually pull out of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think we both know before we attach it to the scale what we can actually do. But I mean, the only way you can, and we're going to show you in a minute, it might surprise some of you, but the only way you can actually pull more is if you point the rod at the scales and you can put a lot more pressure. Or the other scenario is if you're playing the fish and it makes a sudden jerk, you know, and then you can actually like snap a 12 pound hook.
Just one point on that, what you said about lowering the rod there. Like I said to you before, I fish really weedy waters. Now, if I'm at 100 yards and I've got a fish weeded out, there's no chance of me pulling that fish out with the rod.
No.
As you would conventionally use one. So what I tend to do is to do very similar to what you said. I put the rod down at 45 degrees and walk back a metre. by just using that extra bit of pressure, so you might put that extra half a pound or pound of pressure on a fish, I can usually pull them out the weed bed.
That's right, yeah.
And that's, and to me, that's using the rod, that's utilising the fishing rod,
yeah.
you know, to its full capacity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so should we have a go at this then?
Yeah.
Yeah, get some scales.
You're gonna bring the
Rig 'em up
scales
and have a
now?
look. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
be scales man. Yeah.
Brilliant. There they are. Right, Lee, first of all, we use 3 3/4 pound rod. all
Yeah,
right?
okay.
And then I'll put this at 90 degrees. Let's just see what we get on the scale.
Yeah,
all right?
okay, mate.
That's at 90 degrees now. What's that saying, Al? What have you got on there?
Pulling about 1.5 pounds at the
About
moment.
a pound and a half, yeah?
So there you go, that's about 60-yard range, isn't it? And,
Yeah.
and
About a pound
you've got the
and a half.
rod almost at test curve, wet test curve, and
Yeah.
you're pulling a pound and a half.
Yeah. If I lower this rod down and then do it,
And that's, you can see by your face, that's the most pressure you would ever want to put on a...
I wouldn't play a fish like
That's
this
right.
ever.
How much have we got now, Al?
That's just over £2.
There you go.
Just
Look.
over £2. And that's
The
a
pressure,
that's a 3 3/4
Yeah.
pound test curve rod, and
Yeah.
just goes to show, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And you'd never play a fish like that.
So the only way you can pull more than that is if you point it out and pull
Yeah,
straight back,
yeah.
which if you've got a fish weeding,
Yeah,
which is like you said you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we'll
All right.
try it with the other rod now,
Yeah.
shall we?
Should we try it with yours now?
Right, now we've got it with the 2.5 pound test curve rod. I mean, the only difference is this rod's got braid on it, which shouldn't really make any difference,
Right.
because there should be no stretch, that's all.
Yeah.
So we get it to... Yes. Start again. Right, that's about to test curve. What you got, Al?
£4.5.
There you go. That's mad. A lot of that is to do with the fact with the braid, because you've got no
Yeah,
stretch in
that's
it.
right, yeah.
When you use a mono, and you're going at like 50, 60 yards like we've got so much stretch in that
yeah.
mono. With a braid, obviously you've got no stretch, so you're going to pull a lot more pressure on a 2.5 pound rod than what I'm going to on a 3 3/4 pound rod.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, braids make a difference, but even with nylon, Dave, I'm sure I can pull more with this.
Yeah.
What we got, Al?
It's nearly £6 now, Lee.
Yeah,
Right.
there you go. That's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
And people, you know, it's difficult for me to get my head
Yeah,
around that.
that's right, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, that's about the maximum I would want to pull. I wouldn't
Yeah.
want to pull any more
No,
than that, you know?
no, that's mad. Two and a half pound rod against a 3 3/4 pound rod, and you're exerting over twice as much pressure on
right,
that as
yeah.
what I can on
Yeah.
this.
Well, it's amazing, really interesting, I think, to see. I know you had the braid on, Lee, but I don't think that made that much difference, that you could actually pull more with a 2 3/4 or 2.5
yeah.
to Dave's
3
sure-
3/4.
3 3/4.
Yeah, and watching it, I mean, I could feel the difference holding the scales. It was actually, the scales were, you know, I could actually feel you pulling. When Dave had his on, you could hardly feel them moving.
That's right. Well,
And it's to do with using a lot more of the rod.
I think that's what it is, yeah. I mean, the rod, I mean, they're a fairly sort of, they're not a fast taper rod,
No.
whereas Dave's is fairly fast taper. And I think because you're using actually, you know, more with the rod, you can pull more.
Yeah, I looked up, I could actually see your rod
I can
well bent, and like
Yeah.
Dave's, it was just a sort of quarter of the
I can
tip
remember
section,
seeing
you
a
know.
guy do it some years ago. We were using, well, donkeys years ago, at the London School of
Yeah.
Economics, one of their shows.
Yeah,
And he actually had a fly rod on there, and
Yeah.
he could pull more with his fly rod than
yeah,
you know, the eye test curve rod or anything.
Yeah.
You know? And likewise, when I went to Stuart Gilman's place in Thailand, he actually hooked to Arapama, which they fight like mad,
yeah.
on a fly rod, and he got it in a lot quicker than you would
Yeah.
with a like sort of, you know, proper sort of cat tamer
Yeah.
rod, like, you know.
Yeah.
So there you go. It's not always what it says on the packet.
No, that's right, no, you're right there.
No, definitely not.